Hey everybody, it's Chris over at Dixieland Farm, and today I'm going to be going over something that I've been trying to do recently since I've had some time at home, and I've read about this for years, and it took me that long to finally get my act together. And it's on how to convert matrix quad material via computer to a DTS CD. So before your eyes roll back, let me try to explain what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the quad material that's out there. That is either SQ or QS material. These are matrixed quad records. They're just stereo records, but they tried to encode the quad material into them, and then you'd have to have the decoder to decode this, and then you'd have a quad listening experience. But to do this, you would need vintage equipment, which is very scarce or it's unreliable. I mean, it's really hard to find this stuff unless you lucked out and found it at a Goodwill or a garage sale and nobody knew what they were looking at. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get this stuff online, and even then it's broken. And number two, you can achieve better results using the computer. Believe it or not, the vintage equipment, a lot of it were logic decoders, so they were just basic boxes, and the best separation you could get between the front and the rear signals were like 3 dB, barely anything. You would need the logic decoders, and those came out later in the quad scene. And you got your Fosgate, Tate decoders. All of those are highly sought after, but those logic decoders, they do have problems in of themselves as well. They make a lot of pumping noises as they try to figure out what's supposed to be in the rear channels, so they don't work perfectly either. In the computer, we can maybe minimize that using our sophisticated scripts. And also, it's easier to play this material instead of having all that equipment hooked up. I just pop in a CD into my DVD player and turn on my home theater amp, and now I'm listening to a vintage quad mix right now, without having to do anything. So it's pretty cool. Some of the things to make this happen is basically you just need Adobe Audition 3.0, which is free now. You'd have to get an Adobe ID, and it's hard to find on the site where it is, but a couple of minutes of digging, you can figure it out probably. And then there's a patch from 3 to 3.01 that's probably necessary. You need the PhaseBug DLL. This is a VST plugin. It's an extra piece of the puzzle that a lot of the script writers use. So that's a little tricky. You need scripts to convert the material. So scripts are the things that take your stereo needle drops of quad material and turn it into quad recordings, separate front and back recordings. And the scripts go through a lot of math and processing to make it all happen. And there are different scripts out there available. The best ones are guarded and are unavailable. So some of the best decoders decided to not share that material. So what you can do is pretty good, not the best. And then of course you need material to convert. So you need to needle drop or find these matrixed mixes out there. Let me go over what maybe the differences are. I know it's confusing, especially if you don't read up on a lot of this stuff, but what a matrix recording is, what most of the quad material out there is it's just a stereo record. That's all it is. But what they've done is special phase tricks to try to encode that rear quadraphonic material into the stereo recording. And there's different methods that they use. There's the QS method or the SQ method, and there are two others that are rarely used. But basically, maybe Dolby Surround, maybe you know that term from videotape days, or from movie sounds in the 70s. They use these tricks to try to separate what should be in the rear into the stereo image, so that way when you decode it, it'll pop back out. And it doesn't work perfectly. To be fair, CD4 was a different method of encoding onto a vinyl record, and it used a high carrier FM signal to make a difference signal. So what you would have is you would have your normal record playing, and it would have the left rear and front together and the right rear and front together. And then if you had the correct needle and equipment to play it back and wiring, it would find a different signal higher up in the frequency, and it would apply it to what you were already playing and separate the sound out for the rear. Now this worked better, but it also had its own problems. One, you would need a different needle. You would need a special decoder. The records were a little more fragile. Sometimes the decoding just didn't work very well. And while they are compatible with normal stereo playback, if you played those records on a normal stereo turntable, very likely you would be slowly destroying that FM signal because of how fragile it was. The matrix material, you didn't have any problems with that. Also at the same time were tapes. Tapes were perfect for this. So reel-to-reel, which are actually kind of rare in quad, and there was an 8-track format meant for quad. So instead of having 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'd have 1 and 2 being of quad material. These worked well, but you had your problems of it was an 8-track, so it would have wow and flutter. It had limited sonic qualities. It had its issues as well. So a lot of material that's out there are actually just the plain old matrixed stereo recording. Some recordings are actually quad. They didn't even tell you that they were quad. They said it was stereo, but it's actually quad material. A lot of jazz is like that. But some of the benefits are it's the same manufacturing process for matrixed quad, and it's completely compatible with your normal stereo equipment. Your regular turntable would work. Any turntable would work. Your regular needle. You didn't have to worry about special playback to use these quad records. And of course you could just listen to them as stereo. You didn't need to listen to them as quad. That's why that jazz material that was quad, sometimes they didn't even tell you. It was just cheaper to do one cutting, so they would just label one quad, one stereo, but they were the exact same cutting. It was the exact same material. Some of the issues were that the original non-logic separation between the front and back is terrible. I said that before. So like 3 dB, you could barely tell what was supposed to be in the backs compared to the fronts. And the logic decoders that came out later were expensive, and again, they had the sonic issues I mentioned before, that they'd have pumping noise, volume would go up and down and hiss and sputter, and things would all of a sudden disappear from a speaker and then show back up. Now the types of matrix recordings are, there's SQ, that's what Columbia used, and a majority of what is out there is SQ. Or there's QS, or regular matrix. This is what Sansui developed and was patent free. You didn't have to pay to use that. So a lot of smaller labels tended to use RM, which was the free version. QS was the one he had to pay Sansui for if you wanted to call it QS, but most people just called it regular matrix or regular quad. There was also EV4. The only people that I know that used EV4, I think, were the Beach Boys. Maybe Enoch Light did. Ovation Records, same thing with Dynaquad, rarely used. Now, modern day ways to decode this quad matrix material is the Involved Surround Master. This is a brand new piece of equipment that came out a few years ago. It's about $500, I believe, made from Australia, and it'll decode this material. But it's $500, and it's supposed to work great. If it was $300, I probably would buy one. $500, a little bit out of my price range. Also, there's built into most home theaters. There are some decoders. There's Dolby Pro Logic 2 or DTS Neo. These were developed by the people who developed the Matrix quad systems in the past, so you see some of the same names. It turns out that Dolby Pro Logic 2 decodes regular Matrix, or QS, the Sansui version, very well, almost perfectly. And some people say the DTS does as well of a job. You can flip back and forth. It's free. If it's inside your home theater amp, you give it a try, and it does a pretty good job with the SQ stuff as well. The difference between SQ and QS is SQ wanted to make sure it had the best left and right separation, while the QS, the Sansui version, wanted to make sure it had the best separation between front and back. So those were the compromises it decided to make. Again, why use software? That we can actually do a better job using software. Since it's not in real time, we can apply sophisticated math that's really hard to do in hardware and have results that are easy to use after we're done. Most people who do this kind of decoding will end up putting it into DTS. So we can encode DTS multi-channel pretty easily. The program's like $100, I think, to do it. Surecode, I believe, is the program that does in Windows. There's actually a free way of doing it in Linux, and that's since I use Linux, it's free to me to encode into DTS. And we can trick our CD burning software. We can trick it to take the DTS files, turn them into CD burnable WAV files, and we can burn them onto a CD relatively easily doing this trick, which is pretty neat. So then we can play them in our DVD or Blu-ray players, as long as our amps can actually decode DTS signals. Most home theater amps can. The other options, of course, is we can have a multi-channel wave. Part of the process I do here is when I run through all this decoding, it turns into a multi-channel wave. We can turn that wave into a FLAC file. But of course, you have to be able to play that back. And most computers, they tend to downmix things into stereo. I don't have a way to play multi-channel on my computer. And my music server setup, everything gets mixed down to stereo, so I wouldn't have a way to play it anyway. So that's why I tend to use DTS. There is another option. We can burn to DVD audio, which is perfectly suitable to play back multi-channel audio. It would be in high res, which is really cool, but you'd have to have a compatible player. For whatever reason, DVD audio is just not in a lot of players. Some universal players can play it, but a lot of your Blu-ray players cannot play DVD audio. Now, part of the spec of DVD audio is to have a DVD video layer, and so those are compatible in everything, but it would be at a lower resolution. As a matter of fact, it would be at the same resolution as DTS. So that's why I tend to use the DTS CDs, but also a lot of your, let's say, fan-made DVD audio, they don't adhere to that standard. So you'd have to extract the audio and then convert it to DTS anyway. So in the end, the DTS CDs seem to be the most compatible with everything, easiest to burn, and easiest to chop up and manipulate and all that kind of stuff. So all this material that I'm talking about, and I'm sure it's confusing, can be found on the Quadraphonic Quad forums, and including the links and scripts to all the programs, and it's all there, folks. And it took me days of searching to read everything and find all the scripts and pieces, but I did piece it all together from those forums. But let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm talking about here, okay? So let me load up Adobe Audition, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up, like I was about to do a script. I would load up my edit view, I would go to scripts over here, and you can see one of the scripts I have here is SQ Final. So I've edited the script file to look in a certain directory. I would put my stereo matrix recording, a needle drop, I would call one of the files front, and then I would copy that file and make one called rear. And what it would do is it would go through all the different little things here. So you can see it starts applying the phase bug to part of it, then it starts doing some kind of extraction, and then it starts applying more phase, and then it starts doing more stuff. You can see as we go down here, more and more and more, and it just keeps doing stuff to the file until it's completely done. Then it starts doing the rear of the quad needle drop, and it does the exact same thing, and it starts trying to figure out what instruments are supposed to be in the front, which instruments are supposed to be in the rear, and it starts making all those calculations. And it takes a while. It takes about 2 hours on my modern computer to run this thing. By the way, Adobe Audition is a Windows program. I'm running it in my Linux machine. There's ways to run Windows programs in Linux. But after I am done, what I would get, let me load up a front wave file and a rear wave file. So in this example, this is a Billy Joel album that I found on YouTube. It was a needle drop of the SQ version of Turnstiles, so a matrixed stereo file on YouTube that I downloaded, and I ran through the thing just to see if it would work, and it does work. We can see right here where the yellow marker I just put on, you can see the top is the front signal, so that's left and right, and the bottom is the rear signal, left and right. And you can see that the waveforms do not match up. Let's try over here. I'm going to hit solo, and it's not going to sound great through my video capturing program here, so don't be alarmed by the sound quality. So we've got a lot of piano, but if we listen to the rear, we have a lot more horn and less piano. So here's the front again. So a lot of piano, a lot of drums, and in the rear, mostly just the horn. And you hear the vocals are now in the front. And here's the rear where there's less vocals, barely any. So that's a demonstration of what we can do with this complicated processing. I know I'm not really going through exactly what I'm doing, but I just wanted to show you that this is how we can turn old vintage quad material and update it to be able to play back on modern hardware, have superior results with zero money outlay. This is all free, and that's it. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, of course, you can leave a comment. I certainly can help. Sorry, it was a little jargony, but I'm really excited that I'm able to finally do this and get to really build up my quad collection. So, from Dixieland Farm, take care, everybody.